Welcome to the show, Greg Tompsett. Welcome back, actually, from the Cover One podcast. Greg, how are you tonight, my friend? Thank you so much for hopping on.
Doing well, yeah. It's a fun time to be here. It's was a long time where this time of year I was just watching other teams play, and now it's kind of fun to be in the mix.
I know the first time we interviewed you was last year before the Bills took on the Colts in that playoff game, and the Bills made a miraculous run to the AFC title game. And this time around, divisional round, beat the Patriots on Saturday. I guess what were your takeaways from that game? Were you surprised by the result and how convincingly they won that football game?
I mean, anyone who says they weren't is lying. I picked the Bills to win. I thought that they were going to win the game. I thought that they were the better team. But any Bills fan who didn't have 20 years of sports PTSD telling them that, I don't know, man, Belichick's third chance at this team. He's gonna have some wacky game plan that we're not ready for. If we showed up for that game and he came out in wildcat offense and just ran cover zero blitz all day, I wouldn't have been shocked. So there was a piece of me that was telling me, I don't know, man. I know we're the better team. I know we're more talented. I know we have the better quarterback, but I've seen this guy pull rabbits out of hats, and going the other direction to not only show that they were the better team, but to put up an unprecedented historic performance. No punts, no field goals, no turnovers, no turnover on downs. Converted every third down, scored a touchdown every time they had the ball. It was unbelievable. It was just a celebration, and taking out 20 years of frustration on the neighborhood bully. It was nice.
Greg, when I look at this game and what actually came to fruition when we were talking about it last week, when we were making our picks, the Bills or Patriots, one of my biggest takeaways was that what I love about this Buffalo team more now than ever, especially the last couple of years, is that towards the end of the regular season, they finally established that run game that it seemed like they were missing forever. And without Josh Allen's 66 yards rushing, they still combined for 110 yards rushing the football and 2 touchdowns by Devin Singletary. And I think that's really because what you're getting out of Josh Allen passing the football. You know the weapons on the field. But against a Bill Belichick defense running the football the way they did, I think that's ultimately, combined with everything else, what makes them so dangerous and scary.
Yeah, it's been a really cool mix. And there's some different pieces. They have finally settled on a 5-man offensive line that's working. Inserting Ryan Bates towards the end here at left guard has really solidified things. Spencer Brown back at right tackle. They had right tackle Darrell Williams there. They kicked him inside the guard. And then Deion Dawkins and Mitch Morris have been kind of the two mainstays at left tackle and center. But finding the other 3 combinations, they've now solidified that. Over the last 5 games, it's been really good. They've introduced another mid-round draft pick. Spencer Brown's been starting, but now Tommy Doyle has actually been playing as kind of the pseudo blocking tight end, 6th lineman. Some of these games, 25, 28, 30 reps of 6 linemen. Reggie Gilliam playing a ton more at fullback. You don't think of fullback and 6th offensive lineman formations with Josh Allen. Is just not what people equate it to. So you mix that in, now all of a sudden Devin Singletary is going for like 81.5 yards a game over this stretch. And when you have Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, I don't need Jonathan Taylor. Not that I wouldn't take him, but you don't need a dominant run game. I just need the other team to care about it. I just need them to be conscious of it. I need it to be a distraction for them, because the moment they turn their eyes to that, he's going to get you.
You look at the teams left in the playoffs. Look at where these running backs were taken in the draft, mid-rounds, right? Some of them, James Conner was signed off the street for the Cardinals. I know they're out now, but, I mean, you guys get the point, right? Devin Singletary's not a blowover running back. Neither is Zach Moss. But they get the job done.
Sony Michel, Cam Akers, Jerick McKinnon, and granted, I think that if you ask most Chiefs fans, they like McKinnon and Darrell Williams more than Edwards-Helaire, the guy they spent the first round pick on. But yeah, the Bills took 2 swings at it in the 3rd round. Zach Moss has been okay, but Singletary looks nice, and I think that it's, people have made a big enough deal about the other 6 picks that went before Josh Allen in the 1st round, but certainly in hindsight, Barkley is an elite talent, but I'm guessing they'd rather have Allen.
You brought up a very interesting point about the offensive line, and I think this ties into our next question. It was built a lot with Brandon Beane coming over from the Carolina Panthers in 2017, who I believe it's pronounced Joe Schoen, correct?
Yep. Shane
brought Joe Schoen over with him to Buffalo to be his assistant. How good of a job have those two done together in building not just that offensive line, but from the team ground up? I mean, Buffalo, this was as low as you could get, not making the playoffs in over a decade.
17 years is the longest drought in professional sports. So you go through, and people were asking me before, and I wrote a thing earlier on Twitter saying, of any of the things that you want to take away from the Buffalo Bills rebuild, the most sustainable, it's easy to be, we'll just go find a Josh Allen and draft him. Well, that's easier to say than it is to do. It's like, hey, just go draft Patrick Mahomes. It's easy. The most sustainable piece is make sure you find a head coach and a GM that are in absolute lockstep, not can work together, not won't be an issue, not, hey, we'll work it out on who has control of the 53-man roster. It needs to never even be a discussion because they're so aligned strategically and philosophically that it doesn't matter. They're on the exact same page, same contract, all of those things together. And, there are parts of the year where Sean McDermott is the absolute leader of this team during the season. In the offseason, it's clear that Brandon Beane is the absolute leader of that team and that they work in concert, knowing exactly what each other needs. And you then take guys who are really talented, like Brandon Beane and the staff he built with Joe Schoen, and Dan Morgan was actually a piece of that. Dan Morgan just took the assistant GM job in Carolina after he had been the director of player personnel. They also were pretty humble. There's guys within there that, Brian Gain, who used to be the GM of the Texans, is in the staff. Dennis Hickey, who used to be the GM of the Dolphins, is in the staff. They have no problem not always needing to be the smartest guy in the room, that you can let other people flourish and be good at what they're good at. And the Bills are kind of careful with it, but they put out a lot of content after the draft and after free agency. And you can see times where Brandon Beane's in one room negotiating with one free agent, and Joe Schoen is in the other room fully negotiating with that other free agent at the same time. Matter of fact, they showed a video where Brandon Beane was in one room, this was 3 years ago, signing John Brown, while Joe Schoen was in the other room signing Cole Beasley, and they come out and like, did you get him? Like, yeah, okay, I got him too. And so just showing the autonomy that it wasn't this one guy pulling all the strings, that they brought together people that are talented, and Joe Schoen was certainly a big piece of that.
Now, Greg, you just mentioned obviously the coaching staff, the front office, all being on the same page. But talk about Brian Daboll and his success that he's had with this offense. You talk about Josh Allen, the success story just in himself. Forget about the entirety of the offense. But Josh Allen going from a guy who was one of the later quarterbacks drafted out of that class, a guy who went from a 52% completion percentage to all the way to 67, 68 last year, earning himself a $250 million contract, MVP discussion. And now we're talking about this team maybe beating the Chiefs, which everybody thought was going to be a dynasty around for a decade and nobody would even be able to compete with them. And now we're talking about this team potentially going to the AFC Championship game and maybe even going to the Super Bowl if they do surpass the Chiefs.
It's hard to unravel who gets what slice of pie for the credit for Josh Allen's development. I don't know how big of a piece to give Brian Daboll, but he's one of the biggest factors. So people give Ken Dorsey some credit. People give his offseason coach Jordan Palmer some credit. And then Allen himself and his work ethic is a big piece of it. But Brian Daboll's ability to adapt the offense to what fit Josh Allen, to study the analytics to understand where we hit the most successful. In this last game against the Patriots, they scored 5 touchdowns. All 5 were on play action. All 5 touchdowns were on play action. He knows what puts Josh Allen in the most successful position to be, a great quarterback. And that I think having a play caller and an offensive play designer who is intelligent and creative and is going to bring things to the table, but also isn't so stubborn and pig-headed that, no, these guys got to run my system, that he's going to adapt things. He incorporated play designs from SMU that Cole Beasley brought from June Jones that he thought would fit well, that Cole Beasley used to run in college. He incorporated some option routes from Stephon Diggs because Diggs liked to freelance a little bit earlier in the game to set up cornerbacks because he knew he could get them later when they didn't realize what he was going to be doing. A lot of teams don't operate that way. Kyle Shanahan doesn't operate that way. He knows he wants guys to take 12 steps and then put their foot in the ground and go. And if you take your 13th step, he's going to pull you and put in the other running back. And just it's that kind of flexibility that I think should be intriguing for teams. And the Bills were really fortunate last year that Daboll didn't get, plucked. And there's a couple jobs that I can't really understand why they went the other direction, but the Bills got another season out of it. And I think we're pretty resigned to the fact that this is probably the last run with him, but God bless him. He's done a great job. Hopefully this season ends in a very nice fashion. But I think whatever team hires Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, I would love to see it as a combination, is going to be doing right by their fan base.
And quickly here, obviously, I'm not sure where your head is with that at the moment, but where do you think they could potentially end up? Obviously, Shane had his second interview today with the New York Giants in person, and it's rumored that Brian Daboll would be high on his priority list of head coaches if he were to take the GM job with the Giants.
I think that has to be prominently on the list. A lot of people, there were rumors, and I don't know a ton of the origin of it, that Chicago had a lot of interest in that pairing. Miami has interest in Daboll. I don't know what his relationship is with Chris Greer. And then a part of me always wondered, Daboll's been kind of spoiled that he's been able to work with Josh Allen this whole time. I always wondered if he would then want to hitch his wagon to maybe a Trevor Lawrence, if he was going to take a stab at that to try to do it and not have to start from scratch. So those are some of the ones that came to mind for me. And Denver's a good team. Minnesota's a solid team. I just don't know that I see the interest there from the stability with the ownership or a young franchise quarterback or something along those lines that would draw him there. So one, I don't know that he's absolutely in the position that he just gets to pick and choose his destination. So if he gets offered a head coaching job, he's going to be very interested. He's worked very, very hard to get an NFL head coaching job. And same thing with Joe Shane's worked very hard to get a GM job. So if they're offered one, they're going to be interested. But I think Giants, Chicago, and Jacksonville are the top of my list.
Interesting. I
like
the Jacksonville.
I know for us as Giants fans, Greg, that is our dream. In fact, Tom and I have already paced out Brian Daboll as the next head coach before we've even hired a GM yet. But we're hoping
getting the pairing and the strategic alignment is huge. Where coming in, and I think Giants are really interesting for Bills fans because there's no animosity. We don't have to play them once every 4 years. We can kind of shadow root for the Giants. Be like, no, it's kind of cool. We can root for them. That's fun. So I think there's an interest level in it going that direction because we certainly want it to be in the NFC because they're good. Yeah, this isn't that. There are some. I have it. I try to explain to people all the time. I think somehow the new armchair quarterback has turned into the armchair play caller, and everybody knows what play they would have called after they see what happened. And everybody, like, it's hard to put yourself in the position of what I would have done if I was Josh Allen, because I literally can't imagine what it's like to be Josh Allen, but I can imagine what it's like to be Brian Daboll. So people convince themselves, well, I know what play I would have ran on Madden. I go undefeated. And it, they have this expectation that if you don't score a touchdown every single drive, that you're a trash general manager. So Brian Daboll, there are some people who give him an unreasonably hard time within the fan base, but he put up 1,000 points in 2 seasons. It's really hard to be upset with back-to-back 500-point seasons and shattering franchise records. So he's good.
Yeah, and now jumping into the X's and O's for the Chiefs game this Sunday, obviously, before we could even talk about the offseason, have to talk about the current season that we're still in. The Bills are going to Arrowhead, where they won back in the regular season. And kind of jumping in to the keys of this game, Greg, for me, the X factor is actually going to be Dawson Knox, because he looked really good against the Patriots, and he had over 100 receiving yards and a touchdown against the Chiefs back in their previous matchup this season. I'm also a big tight end guy. I'm kind of biased. I think you have Stephon Diggs, you have Sanders, Gabe Davis, and Cole Beasley, 4 great wide receivers, in my opinion, that all bring a different element to the table, to the cake that the Bills are trying to build. But I really like Dawson Knox. I think he's the X factor, offensively at least, for them. Is there anybody in mind that you think could be a huge difference maker?
So I think if you're going to take anything away from this Patriots game, and even if you look back in that first Chiefs matchup, the really exciting thing is right now having everyone healthy. So this is one of the first games all season they've had all 5 receivers. So you mentioned, Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Emanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, and Isaiah McKenzie, having all of them healthy, and you can just pick and choose. And I was really happy with the way that they balanced McKenzie and Beasley in the slot, and how they balanced Davis and Sanders outside. And obviously Stephon Diggs is going to play every snap. So having that setup where they have the option to pivot when you see man, or when you see zone, or when you want to have a little bit of, jet motion eye candy to be able to distract the other team, you're able to be in a spot where you can take advantage of how you want to attack that team. Then you mix in the fact that Dawson Knox has not only shown great skill as a receiver, he's really come on as a blocker, and that you don't know what they're going to use him for. And he's used that physicality. He's an elite athlete, and he just kind of had to learn how to play tight end as he's been developing here. But, you go back, and the Bills they passed the ball to 9 different guys in this game against New England. Well, back against Kansas City, they completed passes to 8 different guys. And I think that's where Josh Allen is his most dangerous. And if you look at those 2 things, and you want to say that the 38-20 win against Kansas City and then the 47-17 shellacking of the Patriots are maybe the 2 most impressive wins for the Bills this season, Stephon Diggs only had 4 targets and 5 targets in the 2 games. You didn't have to force feed your number 1 receiver. You let the gravity of his talent tilt the field where the defense has to pay attention to him. And then you just play pick your poison everywhere else and be like, hey, you can do whatever you want, but on every play, someone out of Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, Emanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis, somebody's going to be open, and Josh Allen's going to find that guy.
Greg, I think when we break down these 2 defenses, right, it's pretty intriguing when you break them down, because you look at the Chiefs, and we've heard the stories they've come on, but when you look at the total yards, you wouldn't know that to be the case. The Chiefs being ranked 27th in terms of total yards allowed this year, being 27th in passing yards, and being 21 in the run, while the Bills atop all those things, number 1 in points, number 1 in total yards. And then when you go to total points, that's where it gets interesting, because the Chiefs are number 8 and the Bills are number 1, even though for some reason, I can't fathom this, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. The Bills having no defensive Pro Bowlers representing the AFC makes 0 sense to me.
So multiple all-pro players, but no Pro Bowl players.
But
makes total sense.
To round out this question, with that being said, we've obviously seen some defensive struggles, especially in the secondary for the Chiefs. So is this going to be the battle test between solely Allen and what he can do, passing the football and running the football, and Mahomes? Is this going to be a true quarterback battle, or is this more so a team effort all around?
I mean, for me, I think we're talking about the two best teams in the NFL. I think that there's a tier, just like last year's AFC and NFC championship games. I think it's going to be some combination of the Bucs and the Packers and the Chiefs and the Bills. So it's a shame that this one's a week early and still has to be decided now. But I very much think that the winner of this game is the Super Bowl favorite. It doesn't mean they can't lose to Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, but I think the winner of this game is the Super Bowl favorite, and I think it's going to be decided by that quarterback battle. The Chiefs' defense is better than what their numbers belie. They're better down the stretch, but I think there's also some questions in there. Out of those last 4 games, they just gave up 21 points to the skeleton of Ben Roethlisberger. But down the stretch, you're also talking about, they had to outscore the Chargers 34-28. They lost in a shootout to the Bengals 34-31. They gave up 20. They only won 28-24 at the end against the Broncos. They're giving up points to offenses not as good as the Bills, but they were able to outscore them. So nobody was too concerned with it. So, I think if you have combinations like Chris Jones and Frank Clark and Melvin Ingram, that's a strong pass rush. Obviously, having the Honey Badger is a threat in the secondary. Their pass rush has to get home because they just don't have the horses in the secondary to hold up. If Josh Allen breaks contain and is rolling out, he's going to find somebody. So Chris Jones has to have a dominant performance, has to disrupt Josh Allen, and you need Frank Clark and Melvin Ingram containing that and not letting Josh Allen out of the pocket, because everybody's seen that by now. Like, if he breaks contain, either he's running for 25 or 30 yards, or he pulls up and sees what was the one last night. Oh, look, there's Emanuel Sanders on the opposite side of the field. Let me just throw a quick 55-yard rope to the other side of the field. And boom, he almost puts a touchdown through the man's chest. It's, you have to get to him. They have to get to him. But when you have Chris Jones, Frank Clark, and Melvin Ingram, that's a threat. That is the real threat. So I think that the Bills defense can annoy Patrick Mahomes and not let him just rip them apart, but nobody's shutting down Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. I think it's going to come down to the Bills can annoy Mahomes, keep him under control, and then it's whether does that pass rush get home to give the 1 or 2 turnovers they need, the 1 or 2 disruptions they need, where then they win the shootout. Because if it doesn't, I think the Bills will outscore them.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I think defensively, with Leslie Frazier leading the charge there, the question is, I think without Tre'Davious White, and I don't think the Bills have really lost much of a step without him, I feel like sitting back in coverage could be the key to containing Mahomes at least, right? Wouldn't you agree with that? We've seen that the more people rush Mahomes, the more he moves around, and then that's where he becomes dangerous. If you just sit back and you got a speedster like Tyreek Hill, I mean, you could surrender some intermediate routes to Travis Kelce, as long as you don't give up the big play. I think you're okay, right?
That's what they have to do.
Right.
Because just like that, losing Tre'Davious White is never good. But the Bills' scheme has hidden it a little bit. Yeah. But Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace aren't covering Mecole Hardman and Tyreek Hill. They're not locking them down. It's the scheme that's going to keep them in play. And really, it's the versatility of having Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. It's having those two just ridiculously athletic center fielders that can erase so many mistakes. They cover up for the issues and challenges that you have in the secondary. So it's going to be frustrating. Bills fans are going to get frustrated because they're going to see a lot of 7 and 8 and 9 yard completions in front of people to rally and tackle. And it's going to be, hey, we bet you can't go on 11 and 12 and 13 play drives. And we bet you can't go the whole time without a penalty or without a sack or without an incompletion. And then all of a sudden we get you in 3rd and long, and then we got you. So they're going to bet that, hey, maybe you can do that 2 times, but we bet you can't do it 4 times. And that's going to be their bet, is that, hey, we can just frustrate you and annoy you and keep everything in front of you, rally and tackle, and hope that you make a mistake. Now, that hope may not be enough. Patrick Mahomes might just let you up and find ways to score anyways. But that's going to be their bet. And it certainly worked earlier in the season. They held them to 20 points as one of their lower outputs of the season. I think it's going to be a challenge to hold them to that amount again. But I think that they have the ability. They've really now they believe in the kind of waves on the defensive line. That we don't have a Khalil Mack, we don't have a Joey Bosa, someone like that, but we have 10 defensive NFL caliber defensive linemen, and having that where you can just keep rotating guys, it's really paying off now. And the pass rush is looking better later in the year, and now getting home more sacks, more pressures, more impact, because they're healthy and have been kind of load managed to get to this point. And now we have 8, 9, 10 fresh guys we're throwing at people. I think that could be an interesting part this weekend as well.
Right. Kyle, is there anything you wanted to add before we get into the game predictions?
No, I was just going to ask if there would be one thing, because I know we talked about X factors. If you were to pick, Greg, one player from each team to watch out for, maybe an obvious choice, maybe an under the radar choice, a player from each team that you think will be the defining factor or an X factor in a sense for each team in terms of their success.
So for Kansas City, it's going to be one of the 2 secondary receivers. It's going to be, can Byron Pringle or Mecole Hardman get loose because of the degree of focus they have to put on Hill and Kelsey. I think they can avoid Hill and Kelsey ripping them apart. They're going to get theirs, but I think that they can keep them to, hey, Kelsey got 7 for 76 and Tyreek Hill got 8 for 95. And that, okay, we'll live with that. That's, good games, but not ripping off, 12 for 130 and 3 touchdowns in the stuff that we see. What makes me nervous is that takes attention, and that Mecole Hardman or Byron Pringle are fast enough athletes that they could get behind people. We saw that interception on Saturday night that Micah Hyde erased, but he had to do that because, Nelson Aguilar got behind our cornerback and was there. And I thought it was a touchdown. I thought he had him beat. When you have Mac Jones throwing that pass, Micah Hyde had time to get there. When it's Patrick Mahomes, that ball's probably going to get there before you could get a break on it and get there in time. So those are the 2 that make me nervous because of the attention that you need on Kelsey and Hill. On the Bills offense, I think your Dawson Knox call is a really good one. So I think that's a solid one, but I'm going to add in, I think that Emanuel Sanders has kind of flown under the radar. He was really hot at the beginning of the year. Then he had a little bit of injury challenges. And then we saw some of the breakouts for McKenzie and Gabe Davis and other things. And he's kind of just floated by. They even rested him a couple games at the end of the year. He's a guy that I think could make a sneaky impact with how much attention the other guys get. I could see Emanuel Sanders making a big play.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Veteran
too.
Yeah.
In the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he's been to 3 actually. Three with 3 different teams. It's crazy.
Oh, he was there with Pittsburgh back then.
Yeah. Pittsburgh, Denver, and San Francisco. Heck, people don't really remember this, but if Jimmy Garoppolo is 1 yard more accurate, Emanuel Sanders is the guy who was there wide open for the game-winning touchdown to catch that. So it's, you never know. It's a lot of crazy things could happen.
All right, so let's pick this game. A lot of anticipation for me. This is the toughest game to pick all week because, Greg, as you mentioned, this could potentially be the unofficial Super Bowl, right? The 2 best teams in football potentially. I really want to pick Buffalo in this game, but there's still some games they've had this year that scare me, like that Jacksonville 9-6 loss. Like that, that makes me a little reluctant to pick Buffalo. But we'll start with you here. Who do you think's winning this football game?
So I think obviously it's in Kansas City. They've been to 2 straight Super Bowls, 3 straight AFC Championship games. They have the preeminent quarterback in the NFL. There's a lot of really good reasons to pick the Chiefs. I think that the Bills are the only team that can legitimately beat the Chiefs, even if the Chiefs are playing well. Like, there's a lot of teams that could beat the Chiefs if they stumble or have an iffy game. There's not that many teams that if the Chiefs come out and play a good game, that you can beat them. Most teams can't. If the Chiefs come out and play their A game, they beat almost every team. The one team that I think can actually hang with them and beat them, even if the Chiefs play well, is the Bills. And it's because of the diversity of their threats on offense and because of the scheme and the talent they have on defense. And that, it's not reasonable to say, oh, they're just going to keep playing like they did against the Patriots, because that was a historically unprecedented level. But they're obviously on a heater. Like, they're obviously playing well. That's 5 straight, and 5.5 if you take that second half against Tampa Bay, where they came back on them and took them to overtime. I think they have the horses to do it. It's absolutely a coin flip. I'm certainly gonna pick Buffalo with my heart, because I think they have the horses to do it and capable of it. But anybody who says they know what's going to happen in this game is kidding themselves. This is going to be a historic heavyweight fight, haymakers back and forth. I think we may see, one of those all-time memorable games where it's score to score to score to score. This could be one of those crazy, 42-38 games where the last team that held the ball wins. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I certainly hope that the Bills are the ones that have the ball last.
All right. 1 for Buffalo. Kyle, what's your mind thinking here?
My mind is telling me Kansas City, but my heart's going with Buffalo. For me, when you watch athletes, that picture and envision, when Stephon Diggs gets back to the locker room, looks the next day, and you're watching him stand out on the field and watching the Chiefs celebrate the AFC Championship game. As an athlete going into the next season, that's the team you're ultimately going to face. This was their test. This is their test to see how true they are as such a great competitor, not only in the NFL, but to this team. Because this is going to be a team that's not going away anytime soon either. They're going to be a team that's going to be around for the next 5+ years, Kansas City Chiefs. That's going to be their guy at the end of the tunnel that they're going to be facing in the AFC, whether it's in a divisional round or a first round or an AFC championship game for years to come. And I think with the roster that they have assembled, I think that in terms of personnel, I don't know how much of a better opportunity that you can have. With maybe the exception of the health of Tre'Davious White, I don't really know how much of a better personnel that you could have to beat this Kansas City Chiefs team. The offensive line has looked formidable. Josh Allen has looked unstoppable. They finally have a solidified run game. And the Chiefs' deficit is only going to favor this Buffalo Bills team, especially with the receiving core that they've developed, in the fact that Charvarius Ward is not very good, and the secondary as a whole, with really the exception of Tyrann Mathieu, is not very good. They give up a lot of passing yards. And if they can't rush the passer, Greg, like you said, it's going to be a long day for this Kansas City team. And the offense has the capabilities to get them back in the game. But what Josh Allen proved to, let alone the Buffalo Bill fans, but the NFL, is that he can put up numbers in big-time moments, right? Because, you look at the Colts game last year in the playoffs. That was a shaky game by Josh Allen.
Yep.
This was a prove-it game against not only a tremendous defense, but a Bill Belichick defense. Now you're going up against this Kansas City Chiefs team where the front 4, front 7 are good, but that secondary is that's a quarterback stream. And he has the opportunity to do so, and I think they're going to get it done.
I like it.
All right, so it rests on my shoulders here to see if we go for a clean sweep for Buffalo. Now, I really like the improvement Kansas City's made throughout the course of the season as far as their defense is concerned. They have a defensive coordinator that's won Super Bowls with multiple different organizations, one that beat Tom Brady, and offensively, They have a very young offensive line, right? They traded for Orlando Brown, who's still on his rookie deal, I believe. And then you drafted Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, right? What was the biggest problem with Kansas City last year? Both of their tackles were hurt in the Super Bowl, and they couldn't block the Bucs pass rushers, JPP, Shaq Barrett, Devin White, etc. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are more vulnerable this year than ever. We saw them lose to the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't like what they have at the running back position right now. And I mean, it's not awful, but it's nothing to really, go crazy over. I think Buffalo is the better football team. They've had it. See, it's weird because this season, all right, well, Buffalo lost to Jacksonville, had a bad game. They got blown out by the Colts, had a bad game. But what they've been able to do as of late, they beat New England twice. Obviously the Jets, that was an easy game for them, but I think Kansas City's a little more shaky right now. I do think Kansas City will be consistently in the playoffs, making the Super Bowl, but I think this is the one year that they get knocked out short of the Super Bowl. I'm taking the Buffalo Bills to win this game, and that's not a heart pick. That's a mind pick. I mean, do I want the Bills to win this game? Yes, but realistically speaking, I think they did it once. Why can't they do it again? On the biggest stage? They're more prepared for this game. They watched the film from last year. Kyle, you brought it up. Diggs was watching them celebrate last year. Yeah. You really think they're going to let that happen to them again in the same stadium? Absolutely not. I'm taking Buffalo. And I feel pretty confident in Buffalo as well.
I love to hear it. And I'll give a good way for people to think about it as they go into the game. It's going to be – we're going to have a pretty good indicator quickly because – if Kansas City comes out hot, it's going to be back and forth. If they do what they did against Pittsburgh, which, people remember the final score, their first 5 possessions were 3 punts and 2 turnovers.
Yeah.
You do that in this game, you may not be able to get back into it. So they're going to need to figure out a way to come out a little bit faster. But if they do, like I said, I think we could have a historic game and a crazy one back and forth. But I certainly hope you guys are right.
The only thing that makes me hesitant is it's hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes, right? That's
yep.
Yeah.
Kyle was saying that it was right in the edge. I thought you were going to say it. I think Mahomes and Allen is going to be the new Brady and Manning. I think that we're going to see them back and forth for a decade. Yeah. I mean, I think that one of those two could represent the AFC. I think Herbert will make some noise. I think Burrow will make some noise. But, I think Allen and Mahomes are going to have an awful lot to say about who represents the AFC in the Super Bowl for the next decade.
Well, Greg, we've had a lot of fun talking with you tonight. A lot of great thoughts. Anything you wanted to add? And if you can plug your podcast as well, sure, and where people can find you.
Sure. No, I appreciate the opportunity. It's great talking to you guys all the time. Come on over, find us at Cover One. You can find us on our Cover One YouTube channel at Cover One online. You can find me at Greg Tompsett. You see right down below here. We have all kinds of different stuff. So obviously I focus mainly on the Bills, but we have guys who do draft work. We have a fantasy show. We have betting analysis. We have all kinds of fun stuff over at Cover One. So come on over, check us out. Some of the best film work you'll see all over the place. And obviously as we get to the off season, we'll be talking a lot more about the front office and coaching changes. So maybe I'll be back on with you guys pretty soon here. If we see a shift heading your way, we can talk a little bit more detailed about what you might expect with some new leadership with the Giants. Appreciate you guys.
Best of luck to you and your Buffalo Bills on Sunday.
Thank you. We'll talk to you guys soon.